Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the world's only global podcast dedicated to cycling style, culture, fashion, trashing influencers, white socks, white shoes, all that good stuff. This week, we have both an exciting episode and an understaffed episode. It's an exciting episode because we have an interview with three people from Standert Bicycles, including the founder, Max, because if you listen to our last episode, Universal Alex trashed them a little bit and said they're all marketing, blah, blah, blah. You can go back and listen. But Max, the founder of Standert, left a comment on the Instagram saying he didn't agree with some of the things that have been said. Anyway, started a conversation and we ended up having a very long chat with them. What I said about our staff, it's just me and Tony today. So Tony, you got anything to add about Standert?
Well, I mean, I think that it doesn't matter that we're understaffed because that was a long and very good interview. I think the impetus for it is always good when it comes from us trashing someone. We've had that before. It was interesting because it's our first bike brand, first frame manufacturer to be on. So that's exciting. I think in Max's comment, he was kind of relating that it wasn't fashion, but we should be on anyway. It's totally fashion. We talked about it all the time. Whenever we talk trash, they hear through the grapevine, but they don't go back. They don't see that, we've talked about bikes. I mean, I think I put Standard 2 or something like that in the top 5 small bike brands. But anyways, it was a great interview. I just want to give you a shout out, Warren, because Universal Alex all of us have been sort of here and there, with busy schedules. And you've been taking over the role of sort of host, in this case, introducing this, but especially in the interviews, and you've done a great job. I don't think we've missed a step. Alex brings a certain charm that only he can bring. So we always do miss him, but you've been doing a great job. And I also want to sort of throw a canal of our 2 new co-hosts, guest hosts that we sort of made permanent. We sort of said, we moved we moved our WhatsApp chat to add them, Italian Alex and Skyler, thinking, okay, we've bolstered the roster. We won't have any of these issues, considering Universal Alex and myself can be busy with family stuff, but they're busy too. They're young people out on a summer's evening. So I don't know if we should have made them sign a contract or if we should look elsewhere. Maybe we need some more co-hosts, or maybe we need to get rid of Alex and Skyler.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a debate.
This will be news for them when they listen to this, but yeah, maybe we need to drop them and pick up, bring back Lily. Lily's been gone for a long time.
I think she's even busier, but should we ask for audition tapes? Oh, no, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah, no, don't send us that, please.
I mean, we already had a lot of people send in early on in the podcast being like, hey, I'd be a great co-host. And
whatever happened to European Harry, we actually don't know. Harry,
no, he ghosted us, and I respect it. I don't know, maybe some of our takes weren't good, or I think he got into actually, I think he got into he got on the race team of our good friends Albion.
Yeah. So
that was a nice connection. So we still, whatever European Harry's up to, we still love him.
Yeah, you're always welcome back, Harry.
Yeah,
if you still listen. We don't know.
Who knows? He's busy riding hundreds and hundreds of kilometers.
Out of everybody, you have the best reason to be missing things here and there. New baby, new job, lots going on.
Yeah,
Alex
I got to
and
get.
Skyler don't.
No, they're just having fun. Well, Skyler, I'm going to throw her under the bus here because she's actually missing this because she's playing ultimate frisbee, which I mean I think should be grounds for dismissal. Just the fact that she plays ultimate frisbee. I mean that's maybe, what would you say, is that one step up above spike ball, or is it at the same level?
I don't know what spike ball is, so
it's that trampoline thing.
Oh,
that you throw the ball and people play in the park, and if I show up to if someone's invited me to a park gathering and that's there, I leave.
It's one
immediately.
Step above, I would say.
It's pretty close, though.
Spike ball's at least you get a cardio workout with ultimate frisbee, kind of.
Yeah, I guess, but how fast does a frisbee go? I've never played ultimate frisbee, but I feel like I'm probably a top 3 worldwide ultimate frisbee player.
I think that's
it moves it so slowly. I just reach out and grab it.
Yeah.
But we won't talk about other sports. But yeah, so I also, unfortunately, due to my new schedule, haven't been able to ride much. But I want to give a shout out to Red White Apparel from Singapore, who sent us me and Skyler some bibs. They're called long distance bibs, and that's sort of what I'm lamenting, is that I have tried them. They're just all black. They're simple. They're comfy. but they're meant to be they're sort of sold as long distance. And I have not I was looking through I no longer use Strava, but I was looking through my Wahoo, and I don't think I've done a ride over 75K in like a year. And then since I got those bibs, I don't think I've done anything over 45 or 50. So I haven't had the chance to fully test them as long distance, but so far with the limited use for shorter rides, they've been nice. They've been comfy. The proprietor asked for my measurements to get me sized, and he actually sized. It was actually very useful, sized correctly, because I usually wear a large. He recommended an XL and sent me the XL. It fits great. Actually fits sort of like a large in other brands. So if you're looking at Red White Apparel, maybe reach out, see if you can double check your sizing there, because I guess it's a little different than some of the brands. But I want to thank Red White Apparel for sending us some stuff, and hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about it with a real more in depth after I get some more Ks in the legs with them on.
I need to give credit to you, Tony, for despite not riding very much, you came on our Fast Friday ride last week, and hung with the group for pretty long time. Like, didn't get dropped until where almost everybody gets dropped, which is the really fast loop of the ride where, the group gets blown apart. So the dad watts, I guess, are a real thing.
I think they're real. Because you know what it is? You get cardio from the fact that you walk. I mean, I wasn't like a walker. Not that I was like a car driver, but just like I didn't just like walk randomly. Like I needed like a destination. And then having a kid now, I just sort of like walk. And so it's like I'm kind of always doing fitness, because either I'm walking around with her around the apartment, or I'm like taking her out on a walk. It's just like you're always moving. I think maybe that's the secret of dad watch, is that you're not riding your bike, but you're always doing something physical. And I'll tell you, 12 pounds, doesn't sound like a lot, but after a couple hours of carrying them around to try and calm them down, it's a workout. This is a parenting podcast now. We know we have a lot of parents that listen, so
it's true. We do.
They'll understand. I think we have. I'd be interested to see our age demographic.
I don't know if we have that information. We have countries and more granular locations, but I don't know if we have Spotify might give that to us. Actually, I think I saw that recently, but I forget. It's not as old as you might think.
Oh. Wow.
I was surprised at how many teenagers actually listen. There are some. All right. Well, with that, why don't we just go right into the interview? As Tony said, it's a pretty long one, but we found it really interesting, and we actually got pretty detailed into their bike production, but just production process in general. And then, talked about a lot of other stuff about their brand. And so let's do that. Welcome to our next segment. And for this one, we are very excited to announce that we have Maxe, and Bene from Standert Bikes. This is a pretty big deal for us, because as our listeners know, we have talked about Standert quite a bit. In a recent episode, I don't want to say Universal Alex specifically talked about their marketing, and Tony talked about how great the bikes were. Anyway, it spurred a conversation with Maxe, who is the founder of Standert, and it worked out that we now have them on the podcast. So guys, welcome to Cycling Fashion Week. We are excited to have you here.
Thanks for having us. Pleasure to be on.
This seems to be a good theme for us to get brands on, is say something sort of controversial or bad about them. Like I just want to say hi to our good friend Nick at Velo Kicks, is how we got him on. And then inevitably they listen, because people, I guess, listen to negative press more than they listen to positive press. And then they reach out to us. So I think from now on, I think we've got to find a goal of some brand we really want to talk to, and just slander them, for like an hour episode of this, and then they'll reach out.
For sure. An episode full of love, we would have probably given a like. So,
yeah. I'm pretty sure I put Standert number 1 or number 2 on the top 5 small brand bike episode. No one heard that. No one listened. And then you make a bit of a disparaging comment, and all of a sudden you get replies. We've learned our technique.
Yeah. I mean, we can't let that stand, obviously.
Just before we get into it, can each of you just quickly introduce yourselves and what your role is at Standert?
I'm Max, the founder and also the designer at Standert.
I'm Maxe. I'm the head of product, so I'm in charge of basically conceptualizing and making the bikes.
And I'm Bene. I'm head of marketing, or in Universal Alex terms, maybe the evil himself. Yeah, all things brand, marketing, PR, events, everything around that since 9 years.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd be evil. I actually think he was saying you did too good a job, if anything.
I think maybe it's like a bit of the angle of marketing, like you guys said kind of in our little pre-chat, that you think maybe listening to it was good for your assessment of how the brand's being touted out in the world, and you have sort of more to say. But I think the angle of marketing, which obviously works for you as well, is one very sort of like aesthetic and sort of beauty driven, and it matches certain things that people are going to like a lot about a brand, and then certain things people aren't. And I guess so I think there's a lot of good stuff you've done with marketing, but now we're here to help you do even better stuff with marketing.
In regards to the marketing, I just initially want to say that when we talk about marketing at Standert, until 1.5 years ago,
Yeah, I think so.
you're looking at marketing like this is it.
Yeah,
We get that a lot, that it looks much bigger than it is behind the scenes.
It's good to know because, yeah, I was reading, I think it's a blog post on your website, your 10-year anniversary that sort of describes the brand's history. And I fully thought your brand was bigger than, or certainly your team is bigger than it was. So it's nice to meet the three of you. Maybe the three of you can just tell us how you each got into cycling, because I think it seems to me relevant how Standert came to be.
Yeah, when we were talking about, in kind of in preparation of this interview, we were looking back and talking about how Standert got to what it is today. And I was in university here in Berlin. I was studying product design, and I was working at the time next to university a little bit as a messenger. Got in contact with this lifestyle of living through the bike, I would maybe say.
Yeah.
At that time, there was a shop here in Berlin that was kind of the hub for the messenger scene, where I found that thing that maybe when I was younger, I used to experience in skate shops, where people would just come and hang out and share their passion in a way that made you, want to go out and do it more. Yeah, the initial idea of Standert was to open a cycle cafe that would serve as a hub for the messenger scene in a different part of the city than that other shop was in. In kind of conjunction with that idea, I also asked myself the question, if I'm going to be a designer and design a product, why is that not the bicycle? Because that's actually the product that I love the most out of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
That led me to creating back then the first Standert frame, which was a steel fixed gear city bike. Yeah, nodding to the Kyrene bikes that were super hip in that time in the passenger scene. And then we just opened doors. My wife, now wife, back then girlfriend, helped me out with the cafe a bit. To really fast forward, that went on for about, I would say, 4 years maybe. It was a bike shop where we sold some frames under our own brand, but really it was a bike shop.
Ooh.
In 2014,
2014, yeah.
2014.
Yeah. So
Bene came
2
on
years
board.
after opening up the shop.
That was basically you hanging out, coming in, saying,
well, I bought my stuff in that shop.
Yeah. You had a what was it? What was your?
I had
Fuji.
a Fuji and a Bianchi track.
Bene had studied marketing in university, and we were just saying, let's work together on this. Although that wasn't actually the initial thing.
No, not really. No, the thing was that the cafe was running pretty well, and also at that time, because right now a cycling cafe is nothing special anymore, right? But back then you had Look Mom No Hands in London, you had the Kyrene in Berlin, but there was not really a thing of cycling cafes. But the match was just so good. So we got quite a lot of publicity doing what we did with the bike cafe. I think your and Anna's idea was what's next, kind of. Mm-hmm. And then there were like different thoughts of, okay, we could do distribution for some brands in Europe or in Germany, or we could do this. But there were already frames with our name on it. So we then thought, okay, no, why don't take this momentum of publicity and the picking up speed with bicycles and just make more models and be a bike brand.
So Max, if I can get this straight, you sort of grew up in the sort of skateboard, snowboard world. University sort of transitioned to be a kind of a fixed gear messenger, sort of fan of the MASH, Macaframa, I guess that's kind of what's out in the US, and then moved into a lover of metal sort of road gravel bikes with clean lines and nice colors. It's basically my story. And so there's nothing negative. I'll never say a negative word about Standert again.
You haven't anyway.
I haven't really. I mean, I maybe criticize the cost, but you know, at the same time, I'm not a businessman. I don't actually know what goes in. Maybe Marinoni's just so bad at business they're charging way less than they should. But in terms of the cycling arc of Max's story, it's so similar to mine. And I just want to say also, kind of on the point of how beautiful the bikes are and that sort of thing, is because skaters, everything you see comes from skaters.
Yeah.
Whenever you see the average person walking down the street and you're wondering why they're wearing Vans or skinny jeans went back to loose pants, it's because of skaters. It's as simple as that.
One of our latest additions to the team is also an ex-pro skater who just got into cycling a few years ago. And yeah, it's just a funny way. Also with back then with the fixed gear scene, it was for a lot of people, right? It went that way. Like they came from skateboarding. They wanted to go around the city fast, maybe even with their skateboards still on their backs.
That was actually my entry point into the scene. I spent I mean, of course I was socialized as a German and a kid of the 90s with you know, Team Telekom and Tour de France and all that stuff that went down in the 90s and early 2000s. That was my view on cycling at the time.
So you never went over 30 RPM watching Jan Ulrich? Your cadence, you couldn't get your cadence up. That was the slowest cadence in the pro peloton.
He's still training like that to this day.
That is actually true. That is actually true. I'm a very proud East Berliner. So and I believe in the training methods of the Eastern Bloc. So I still do that to this day. You know, without all the bad shit that happened, of course. So no, but that was the view on cycling that I had or I grew up with. Also some family ties with racing, dating back to the GDR times. And then I spent a year abroad, or a little bit more, on the West Coast in Portland, in the US, around 2003. And I mean, Portland probably still is one of the biggest cycling hubs in the US. And at that time, there was like Chris King was really, really cool, you know, kind of transitioning from mountain bike into the road bike kind of scene. There was Geek House bikes as like an alternative bike brand coming up. And I just saw this like kind of DIY punk skate attitude towards cycling in that city. And I was totally blown away. I mean, I was totally into snowboarding and skateboarding, and that's why I went to Portland, because it was big in snowboarding back then. So that opened my eyes for this like new kind of style of cycling, and also like the Northern California guys coming to Oregon at that time and like spreading this fixed gear culture and the messenger thing. Then came back to Berlin. Had a couple jobs in bike shops around the time while I was studying, and then Max opened the Standert, and it was by far the coolest bike shop, or the closest that you can get to this like kind of alternative cycling style. And so started to hang around, was friends with Bene. We did some riding, and then Bene started working there, which was weird, but because why would a bike shop need a marketing guy, right? I never understood, but I guess he was really cheap at the time.
I hope you've given him a big raise since then.
There also wasn't an office back then. Like I was just sitting on the couch in the cafe all the time.
Yeah. Ben and me spent years in the basement of that bike shop. 2 desks set up next to a couple of rats.
Yeah. Right. So then I was like a frequent visitor and kind of like took part in the community building. Back then, like doing rides and stuff. And at one point I was just like done with studying. I was like, I don't want to get a real job. I want to work in the cycling industry. Then I was like, guys, you have the marketing, you have the store. I mean, let's build some cool bikes.
Tony, you will know that at that time Red Hook Crit happened, and that was just, I mean, yeah, to the day, that is the blueprint of how cool bike racing can be. Just the whole community and the sport, but also the party and all that together. We were all there. We were all racing it also, and I think this has really translated into the kind of bikes that we have also built after that, because we all reached the point then where, I mean, Max had already started road cycling on a bike with gears, but Ben and me, we were just then, hitting the point where we couldn't go the distances that we wanted on our fixed gear bikes and start training more structured, maybe a little bit to be able to keep up. Also, Red Hook, you know how it went crazy with the level of cycling there, and that brought us to designing our first road bike. That was also a steel bike, because all the fixed gear bikes up to that point all our frames had been steel up to that point. And the road bike, of course, due to, I don't know, personal love for Italy as a German, all German stuff in Italy, had to be made from Columbus steel. To the day, this model, the Triebwerk steel road bike, is widely unchanged. I mean, it has made the move from rim brakes to disc brakes, of course, and it will soon get like its second major overhaul with integrated cabling. But otherwise, geometry and composition of tubes and also the fork and everything is the same since 2015.
Yeah, it was 2015, and it was funny because I was riding the original prototype of the Triebwerk, and I rode it for, I think, like almost 30,000 K over the time. And then because I got really into racing, I rode the Kreissäge, the aluminum bike back then. When I stopped racing in 2020, I went back to the newest edition of the Triebwerk, or Triebwerk disc, and I immediately had the same feel as back then when we first started. So it was like super exciting because it felt like the kind of the same perfect fit for me as it was back in 2015. So that was like a real experience for me after riding the Kreissäge and aluminum racing bikes all the time, then going back and like really feeling at home.
I just want to sort of mention on, because you talked a bit about that, that fixed gear. I wasn't a messenger, but I think it all kind of bled together. The sort of former skater, fixie guy and stuff. I think the criticism sort of leveled by Universal Alex, and this is really a benefit to the marketing in a sense, but is that there's this very sort of like influencer aesthetic to it. It's very beautiful, and I think the criticism of that a bit is that it's the antithesis, in my opinion, to the kind of fixie stuff where the influencers feel very closed off to people. I think this is why they get a lot of criticism. Panorama, whenever we say something negative about Panorama, it gets a lot of sort of play. We get a lot of messages because people feel if they're not exactly part of that side of road cycling, that they're not part of it at all. Whereas the whole point of the skateboard world and the fixie world was that you were kind of anybody could be part of it. Like, I don't know what the skateboard scene it was in Berlin, but growing up in Toronto, Warren was part of it too. And you would go down to there was a few main spots downtown, and you would go down and there was Mark Appleyard, former legendary flip pro, was from the Toronto area. And he would skate down there, and you would go and he would hang out with you, and he would tell you like, oh, I'm going to go to this spot. You want to come? You couldn't do anything he was doing, right? But he would come and you'd maybe try and get do something on the set next to him and stuff. Could you guys just speak a little bit on kind of maybe if there's like a bit of a misconception towards the attitude Standert has, maybe just because you've done such a sort of a nice job in one aspect of your marketing? Like, do you feel you're a brand open? Do you feel, things you put on that it should be for everyone, not just a certain kind of clientele?
Yeah, it's super funny that you say it like that, because like actually we started, as we said, like with the shop and with the cafe and with the hub for messengers, especially like a super open community, and also like with then creating the rides, like it was all grassroots Berlin, open to everybody rides. Like we started with alley cat format and then switched it into road bike rides, training rides, that is super open, that is like super highly frequented by everybody kind of. I really like the take on the influencer brand, because we're actually, I can tell you, we have 5 ambassadors worldwide. So everybody else you see bought that bike. So that's like I think that's like a little bit misleading with what seems to be and what actually is. We're kind of proud that people are so proud of their bike they bought that they treat it like an ambassador thing, kind of. But actually it's a handful.
There's also people out there who, like, by whether it's a standard or anything, and you're like, oh, thank you, brand. It's like you paid full price for that. At least I see that on Instagram.
Yeah. You see that a lot because, like, of course, it draws attention of other brands, and like, you know, it opens the door of, oh, we could push into that place or that market, that personality, whatever. Yeah, but for us, like, this is really like we at a certain point we handed out a few discounts kind of for people we kind of knew, people that were cool, but always like, because for us super important is like the term Standert family. So all our actual influencers, which are really just a handful, like are close to us, are close to the company. Like we're in touch pretty much every day, kind of. We had like a big trip with everybody to Mallorca, and people were there, and like it's really like a close to the heart thing. It's not like we're blowing out the bikes to everybody, just spam Instagram and everything. So that's definitely a misconception of that.
Yeah.
I think I heard a friend was living in Berlin. I think you guys still do a ride, right? Like a weekly ride. So if anyone shows up on that ride, they're on a Claris Da Vinci.
Da Vinci is a Canadian brand.
Not the coolest, but anyone can join. You'll still take photos of them for your stories or whatever. You're open. Just that's I guess that's what we want to kind of clarify. You're open.
Maybe that's also part of the story. Like we have this the Feierabendrunde is the shop ride you're referencing to. That is every Thursday at 6 during summertime. When we started that, like, I don't know, like years ago, like there was just basically Max and I sitting on Standert. And now we have, I don't know, we have a rate of, what is it? Maybe like 60-70% or something of the participants sitting on Standert, because that's kind of how we treat the whole thing. Like it's all organic. Mm-hmm. So we never had any paid ads. We never did that. So I think we paid once. We paid 20 euros to promote an event on Facebook. Like, I don't know, like 6 years ago. So that's all we ever spent on paid promotion. So it's all organic. I think why the whole concept of what people think Standert is or what we are like works like that, because it actually is. So we're not faking it.
Yeah. There is no grand scheme or no plan, how to make the best marketing for this brand. It's like quite similar to the products. We built the bikes that we wanted to ride. We were lucky enough to have this opportunity, and we market what we think is a cool like lifestyle. It is our lifestyle. It is not somebody else's lifestyle. Because you mentioned the algorithms, there is no planning according to algorithms. It just happened to be that the whole style, like the product design, the communication, the storytelling, just aligns with what's cool right now, I guess. But it's never that we sit down and think like, oh damn, like, have you seen that? We should have something in that colorway. It just comes naturally to us, and we are aware that we are extremely privileged and lucky to experience that, and that we are still, or that we stay relevant at this point. Yeah.
I just thought of this thing. I just wanted to show you the inspiration for the first Teamkreissäge. I don't know if you remember that model. That was the beige, red, and blue one from I think 3 years ago.
3 years, yeah.
So that's my son's Playmobil motorcycle. And like, even if I could show you the old frame, there's even this yellow badge there somewhere. Yeah, this is how the designs come together. I just go through my daily life with open eyes, and really the colors on the bikes they're all just what I like. I would say, it's not the other way around, that we're trying to meet some trend. Luckily, people like what we do.
It's also funny because it's as personal as it gets, because you can also see phases of Max in our color schemes, kind of. Like there was a big green phase.
Well, that's ongoing.
It's ongoing, and like there's very, like, it's all super personal.
Certainly 100% we want to live an open-hearted and minded cycling lifestyle, and we welcome everyone. And when you smash us on your Zora bike on the Feierabendrunde, we will be in awe, because those were always the coolest guys on the slopes that had like shitty material and still hand you your butt. But generally for me, in the brand, I do believe that, for example, what Rafa did in the early 2000s for cycling had a very positive impact in the way that they made it look good.
Yep.
And that opened the door to a lot of people that would prior to that say, I would love to go cycling, but I can't be seen in this, shitty lycra. So I guess that is for me a point where I also think one of the reasons for me to do it is to make it look good and make people want to be part of that.
We love metal bikes on this podcast, and we wanted to know why Standert focuses on aluminum and steel in your frame choices. And I even saw on your website that no carbon is one of your like major tenets as a company, which I now fully support, having my carbon frame cracked after 6 months, and that's a whole thing. Anyway, but yeah, can you tell us, we're pro metal bikes, but we'd love to hear why Standert is focused on metal.
Like Max has said, it started with the aesthetics, I think, because we like the love for cycling came partly from the aesthetics that the steel frames, and that we all loved when we got into it. And then when we built our own frames, I mean, quite frankly, it was just no option to have carbon because it was way too expensive to start, right? So, and then over time we really came to, as we grew older, we came to think about like the impact of raw materialism has on this world, right? And then you have sustainability on your mind. You see the landfills full of carbon frames in Asia, and the fact is, it's just not recyclable. When you look at all the projects that had been started by the industry, I mean, all they came up with now is bottle cages and tire levers, and all the years they have been investigating how to recycle carbon. That's all they could come up with. And with metal, it is way more sustainable. Like a good steel frame, you can pass on to the next generation. That's how I got into cycling, as got handed down like as steel frames from my uncle, for example. They can last forever, and then at a point where we were looking into the performance of our bikes, because we were racing, and then we were like, okay, steel is nice and it's cool and can be performing, but we want to have that little bit extra. And then we were looking into aluminum bikes,
Yep.
And then there was another big reason was the rigidity, because where we are from, most of the racing is circuit racing criteriums, and you crash quite often, and you've seen probably the pictures from the tour, Jacobson's S-Works. You crash. It doesn't even have to be a big crash or whatever. You don't even know how you cracked your frame. We had some pretty gnarly crashes with our bikes. I don't know, flying through the air. I don't even know how we got out of there alive. And the bikes are fine, maybe dented, but they're rideable and they don't fail on you. And that's another reason why we believe in metal, right? And then lately we learned that carbon production does not even have a big impact on the environment, but also on the health of the workers in Asia, in the Taiwanese and Chinese factories. So overall, we just don't think it's a sustainable, good material to work with. I understand that it is the non plus ultra if you look at performance, right, at the moment. But then again, with additive manufacturing coming up, we see that metal can be up there. I mean, you're probably all aware that Fillipo Ganna's our record bike from Pinarello is fully metal, right? It's 3D printed Scandium alloy. It's actually the same alloy that we use in our Kreissäger bikes.
Oh, really?
Or we have been using. We were blown away by it because we thought we are the only ones still using that. Or we have been probably in the past 10 years, and now they kind of rediscovered it because it's a great material to print parts with. We definitely now see that metal can be up there performance-wise. It's going to take some years of really intensive R&D and development, but I think we can be up there in the future performance-wise, even with carbon.
On that note, I think it'd be good for you to elaborate a bit more on sort of like your racing history and pedigree, whether it's you yourself or with the Standert brand. Because I know I've seen, and sometimes I go on YouTube and watch GoPro footage from like crits in the US. And I think a few times at some of the bigger races, I saw like a full Standert team there. We'd be interested to hear a bit more about that, because we have a live question from Universal Alex via text, who said he wants to know who asked if they are a pretty boy brand. So to contrast that, maybe you could just tell us a bit more about the racing history. Because when I was reading on your site about the 10-year anniversary, I actually didn't realize how much your bikes have been involved in like racing, and obviously we don't know much about like the crit racing scene in Berlin or Germany. So I mean, as somebody who rides an aluminum bike and thinks it's a great bike, and I specifically bought it because I was afraid of crashing and breaking it, tell us a bit more about Standert's history in racing and performance.
Yeah, well, the history basically starts with us racing. Well, we started with some, I would say, like Gran Fondo road stuff, but then soon got into fixie racing, especially retro crit, and did pretty much all of them except New York. Have you been to New York, Maxa? No. So all the European ones. And that was also the part where we developed the Umlaufbahn, or track bike, also specifically for that. So it was basically a track bike that was mostly used for crits, and specifically for crits. Like also the BB drop was specially for crits. So actually we could still pedal because we had to in turns where others might not be able to pedal anymore or clip the pedal or whatever. That was our first kind of entry into crit racing with a real advantage against the others, basically. So that was alloy, of course. And then we took it the next step and we created a road bike, because we had the Triebwerk, and we thought, as Max has said, we needed a bike that is a bit more stiff, maybe a bit more light, like more performing. And we created a road bike that was, well, actually, like from a business point, stupid, because it was so specifically for flat criterium racing that we, of course, didn't sell a lot into any hilly areas or whatsoever. But it actually was perfect for flat criterium racing, which we did here in Berlin.
Right.
And that's what we did. Like we have our own factory team. Like big brands would call it factory team, I guess. So Team Standert is a racing team, like an official racing team, and we're doing all kinds of elite racing, road races, stage races, criteriums a lot, circuit races. From there, it kind of took off that we realized that the Kreissäge, so our first criterium specific road bike, has something pretty special to it when it comes to really having an advantage in turns, in acceleration, twitchy moments, and all that. So everything you have in a bike race. And from there, like we had Team Standert racing them, but people saw, of course, through us racing those, and saw how we raced them and saw how we could take turns and they couldn't. People approached us and also, like, of course, bought the bike then, which didn't happen to the first generation, because that was also like that was when SRAM came out with the 1x for road. So that was also 1x specific, so you couldn't even put a small chainring on it. So that was also a very limiting factor for people in hilly areas. And then we had like other teams approaching us and other races approaching us, and like that is kind of the multiplying factor of what Standert always feeds off, basically. People being interested in the product, then so at some point getting the product, and then like being natural ambassadors, if you want. And now we have Team Colonia Kids from Cologne, the ones you were referencing to racing in the US. Maybe the fastest or second fastest criterium team in Germany. They have been racing all kinds of carbon bikes before, so they have been on BMC, they have been on Giant, they have been pretty much on everything, but feel that they have kind of an unfair advantage in corners, in turns, in accelerating out of turns with the Kreissäge now, because they actually just say that they save so much energy with going faster into the turns, because they have the ability to go tighter, and they have the ability to accelerate faster out, so they save energy. They compared like all the very data nerds. So even if you thought you would think they would go full in on every aero optimized or anything, which obviously with round tubes is not necessarily the case. But they are super data nerds, and they see how much, because they race the same races every year, like that's how it works. So they have all the data and see how much energy they save from year to year, kind of with different bikes or other bikes. And they saw, like, just from being more efficient in turns on the circuit with the Kreissäge, like that's like a huge advantage for them. And now on a broader scale, we're supporting the youth as well, because that for us, that's super important. We wish we would have that. And it's also like super important. And we also do that very locally, where we really can kind of nurture it as well. So you might have heard, or might have not, from Maurice Ballerstedt. He's a World Tour Pro with Alpecin. And he has been kind of our first protege in the junior ranks. So he's been with us all the time until he got in the under 23s and with a contract in Jumbo Visma. And like before that, we kind of really nurtured that, like, helped out, because like in the junior ranks, there's not much support. If you're not in a rich family, you do it pretty much all on your own. And now we have a very special team that is it's called LV Brandenburg. What is it? That's the state team.
That's the state team. It's kind of like one of the best state selections in Germany, and they're racing on our bikes, which are curated, and with our partners. That we also sell OE for people to buy. Basically, they race the bikes that people can buy on the European circuit on the highest level in the junior races, European Championships, World Championships. That bike actually has pro pedigree now. We are racing. I'm still racing. I consider myself a bike racer. It's my life. I love it. Maybe to explain a little bit, the reason why the bike performs so well compared to others is mainly because we built the bike for ourselves, right? We didn't have to apply to a big audience at first, because we were so niche and so small. So we built a bike that handles super well, but maybe does not align with the American way of thinking, to appeal to a very broad range of customers. When we're talking about toe overlap, steering angles, all that stuff, right? I mean, you were talking a lot in your podcast where you kind of like where you smashed us. You talk about that you could just go to your local frame builder, get a nice steel bike built or aluminum bike with a custom geometry and have it painted in the same way. Well, we have a pretty special geometry, and it's been developed and curated by us, and it's not custom geometry. A lot of times does not actually mean the best. That's the best way to do it, because a lot of people don't have the experience to know what they would need, right? Maybe you were talking more about fit versus geometry, but our geometry is pretty fun.
Or at least for me, custom geometry is usually more like comfort oriented, and less.
It was me who said it, and I think it's because it's more of a comfort thing. I'm not a racer, and also have a very interesting body proportions. I mean, I think that's a good point, right? Because there are different reasons to buy a bike, and they're different. I like the custom geometry because I'm just looking sort of for comfort, but I still like a little bit of performance. But you're right that you guys are designing bikes maybe not in the same way as sort of a sort of a one-off, hand built frame builder. But you're still doing R&D, still being very sort of clear with the path that the bike, how the bike has to perform.
For sure, there will be needs, body type needs that a custom bike will meet. With the way we work, where we have 7 stock sizes, we believe that 95% of people would actually, if they get the right fit on the frame. That means, like stem, seat post, crank, handlebar, spacers, then they would potentially be happy on our bike. Of course, there's different types of riding also. I mean, if you say you want to go long and comfortable, then certainly the Kreissäge might not be the perfect bike. You might still feel good on it for a couple of hours, but then maybe go for the endurance one rather. Maybe if we talk a bit about how we we produce the bikes, and also
Yeah. That was going to be our next question, actually.
yeah, we do those 7 sizes because we do believe that, stock should not mean bad fit. The sizes are in pretty small increments, and also the smaller sizes. That's another topic with the Project Compact that we have there. This specific geometry optimized for smaller riders. So to clear up one thing that you were wondering about, where are the bikes produced? So originally in 2012, the first bikes that we made were produced in China by a Dutch guy who had just, how do you say, relocated there to Shenzhen next to Hong Kong, and opened his frame building shop. But the quality was very up and down. We moved to Taiwan from there for the first road bike and also the first aluminium track bike. When we wanted to do that aluminium road bike, we, without actually maybe being fully aware of what that would do, I was just enthralled by the heritage of this alloy Scandium. The last Tour de France winning bikes of the aluminium age, they were made of Scandium. So I found out that this Italian company, Dedacciai, still has Scandium tubing in their catalog. So I contacted them and said, I would love to build a frame with your Scandium tubing. I had heard that it's kind of hard to work with. Can you recommend a frame builder in Taiwan that can work with your tubing? And then they said, yeah, we might have a contact, but if you do want to, if you just want to make a sample, why not do it in Italy? We have a really good frame builder that we can recommend to you, and it will be fast and not super expensive. And up to that point, all of us were not, we don't have a year-long background working in the cycling industry so everything over the years that we found out, we had to find out. So I wasn't aware that there's still a big and really alive manufacturing world for bicycles in Italy. Then we went to that frame builder based in Bassano. Beautiful place. Me going there for the first time, I was like, okay, so this is where I want to go on business trips in the future. So yeah, we made that sample with him, and he built an amazing bike that was test ridden actually by Maurice Ballerstedt, that young rider that is now on the world tour, and he loved it. And Maxe was test riding another prototype and also loved it. So we just stayed there. The steel bikes are all still produced in Taiwan, also by a really great, we just met them on the Eurobike again. It's a family business in Taiwan, also in Taiwan, such a sweet older lady who runs the business.
Is she welding? Does she run the business, or does she get the welder out?
She's supervising, yeah. She's running.
All right. Not to say older women can't weld if they want to.
They probably
But,
could.
it's not something you see every day.
I don't know where this idea comes from that everybody wants like things made, or especially when it comes to like bikes or kit. They think there's some cachet if it's made in like certain place in Europe or even in America. But we had this like American kit brand called Heavy Pedal on the show recently, and they were talking about how they'd love to produce in America, but American producers only had 6 fabric options, where if the company they work with in Asia has like tons. So I would imagine it's similar. You're working with the people you found in Taiwan who work with the materials you want to use. So I think I'm certainly victim of this idea, because like my bike was made by a guy in San Francisco, and he's a small company, but I'd be lying if I said that wasn't part of the appeal, or it is part of his marketing, handmade bikes in San Francisco, and I'm a sucker for marketing. That's why we like to always ask about the production process and hearing why you've chosen to make the bikes there, because I think that's important, because I think people think there's some cachet being made in Italy or whatever, and not to say that there isn't, but the reality is a lot of our day-to-day products and lives outside of cycling are made, in Taiwan or other parts of Asia.
To be 100% honest about it, originally when starting Standert, I just thought you have to go to Asia. You can't build frames in Europe.
And that is actually not so wrong, because like with the rise of carbon, we're talking like 2012 right now, like 10 years ago, right? Steel bikes became very boutique, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
the few builders you still had left in Europe were either very old or very young, like hipsters just picking up the idea of building bikes. And but there was no way to do like a batch production for metal bikes in Europe. And the Taiwanese never stopped producing steel bikes and aluminum bikes. So the quality there is really high. So you could have chosen to go with, I don't know, a Polish production, for example, or a Czech production, but the qualities was nowhere near what the Taiwanese could offer, right? So that was one of the reasons with the steel bikes. With the aluminum bikes, it was actually because the aluminum were still like in fashion like recently. They've never stopped, and the quality is just like really like the best you could get. They are hand welded, by the way. It is one guy. His name is Diego, who is
There you go.
finishing all the wheels by himself. He's a master. It's an art. Like when you talk about factory production, there's no robots involved or anything, right? It is people cutting the tubes, aligning the tubes, welding the tubes, and hand painted. It's everything is handmade. This is really like the best that we can offer from a production point of view when we talk about aluminum bikes. So all of our aluminum models are produced in Italy.
Just sort of on the comment of how you manufacture, how it's produced. I think some of the comments Universal Alex made, as well as some stuff I've heard, is because I think the rise of carbon means that usually when you think of metal bikes, whether it's titanium, steel, or aluminum, you think of those small kind of 1-2 person shop hand builders. And then if you don't think of that, you think of very inexpensive entry-level bikes, road bikes or others, not usually steel in this sort of day and age, but a lot of aluminum stuff. So I think there may have been, and I'm glad you cleared this up, there may have been a misconception, this kind of idea that, are you guys getting inexpensive, mass-produced bikes kind of done in a way that a really entry-level bike would be, and then painting them beautiful colors with a great sans serif font and selling them as sort of premium bikes? That sometimes comes in that kind of question of the Universal Alex is, are you guys a pretty boy brand? Because the bikes look so good, and we sort of associate metal bikes with either bespoke or cheap, whereas you guys have kind of found a niche where you're not bespoke, you're not welding it one guy, but well, it sounds like it's actually one guy
it
welding
is, yeah.
it. Just
He's just not in San Francisco.
just not in Berlin.
Well, he has a couple of people, like
Yeah.
they in total there are 6 people working there.
I don't know anything about bike production, but I think Tony's right. I think there probably, for some, including Universal Alex, is a misconception in that, and just thinking like, yeah, it's either one guy in a workshop or it's factory line of hundreds of people and it's thoughtless, blah, blah, blah. And I think you're actually the very first bike brand we've had on this show as I'm talking. So that's partly why we don't know anything about bike production. It's just interesting to hear that, but also specifically about Standert, because to Tony's point, they are such nicely done bikes. And like I said before we started recording, we have a friend who has one, and it's up close in person. It's a very nicely finished bike. Oh, I wish Universal Alex was here. He'd be eating his words a little bit.
Yeah.
To clear up about like the whole industry, right? There's basically, it doesn't matter if it's carbon or metal, right? There is a way to quickly do things, and there is a way to really like profoundly do things, right? If I'm a carbon bike manufacturer or brand, I can buy open mold frames from Taiwan and give them a nice paint job and sell them, and I'm like a bike brand basically, right? The same goes for metal, but then you could also invest in R&D, like all these things, like source from the ground up, right? And that's what we do with metal, and I think that hasn't been done in a long time, and that's why people are confused about it, because usually how metal bike production works is you probably like select the tube set from a catalog and then have a frame, build it and paint it nicely, but there has not been much R&D put into it for quite some years. Well, now we see that it's changing, or we would like to be at the forefront of that change and actually go go to the basis of the production, right? Talk to the manufacturer of the alloy, talk to the producer of the tubings, go to the frame builders, try to make it better, just as it is with carbon bike producers, right? There's a big opportunity for us in metal there, and yeah,
it is maybe an interesting behind the scenes kind of story that I would share about the Scandium. So when we came to Dedacciai first, they've been in the business for over 30 years of making metal tubing, but for them it's been going at least towards the cycling industry. They also make metal tubing for wheelchairs and for ice axes and stuff like that. So when we first came there, they very much, it's these white-haired Italian guys. They looked at us like, yeah, you're the hotshots. We get it. Yeah, we have some tubes for you. And then they still had some Scandium stock from almost 20 years ago that wasn't ever used anymore because nobody in the cycling industry was doing that. And then it started picking up, and we actually went through their stock of Scandium tubing. It's now gone. We have used it all up. So it turns out the original tubing that they got they only do the refinement. They do the butting and the shaping and the hydroforming, and the raw tubes come from a company based in Germany, and they had stopped producing Scandium because also there's no use in automotive or train or airplane. So Scandium, when you take a tube, the tensile strength is on paper the same as a chromo steel tube. Scandium is, out of all the alloys that there are, is the strongest. Therefore, it's also quite expensive because it's also a rare material. So all those big use cases, they just use the next best thing because it's strong enough and it's cheaper. So there was no more Scandium to be had. So then that is actually where we're currently at. We had to go out and try and find a new source for this material that we love, that we think builds amazing bike frames. It looks good. It looks promising. Fingers crossed. We have two promising sources currently. One is actually partly based in Berlin, which would be super cool, of course, to have a local source for that. Again, as we found out, the tubes that are built into all the bikes from the last years are also kind of made in Germany originally. And now they are totally hyped, the Italians. I mean, they think it's incredible that they don't understand how we managed to make this product kind of cool again, but they love it, right?
I think just to add to that, and I guess again, this is kind of like the bike or the greater bike industry as a whole, and I think with less going on in metals, because we do know like carbons have like different layups and resins and stuff, that just because it's an aluminum bike doesn't mean it's the same aluminum bike. It's not all the same type of aluminum being made. And I think, again, that sounds like a bit of a misconception when you guys are talking about the specific type of alloy you're using for your bikes versus just kind of the generic term aluminum, which can be used. I guess there's different sort of ranges. So
yeah, I also think like there's a huge misconception, like just historically, from where carbon went and where aluminum went, is like the performance part. Like people think, okay, I have entry level and I go with aluminum, and then if I want to perform, I go with carbon. But that's just not the case. And I think we're trying hard to convince people, and I think in the future there will be even more cases, even from the bigger players, that will back us up, and then we're kind of the ones that say, told you. Really a thing. Like the performance is not below carbon, really.
Oh, I would agree. Like, we often praise metal bikes, and it's usually for aesthetic reasons. We are an aesthetic-based podcast, but I've never had any issues riding an aluminum bike or steel for that matter. The only reason I switched to carbon is the steel bike I was on. I raced cyclocross on, was just a bit too big for me. And I just found a carbon one that fit a bit better. And I was like, well, I'll try carbon. It's lighter and snappier, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, between that and my aluminum road frame, like, I didn't notice a very huge difference. Obviously different use cases, but I'm glad now that when we talk about how great steel and aluminum bikes are, now we have the information you guys have given us to be like, we're not just making it up.
I mean, that's not even talking about the more kind of spiritual
Sure.
parts of it, right?
Yeah.
if we talk about steel and we have to talk about ride feel compared to carbon, to me, 100% steel has more soul, and that is, that is kind of a cliche maybe,
It's
but
true
it's
though.
true. It's just the elasticity of the material, the way it feels on the road is just different.
Oh, I agree. I had a Ritchie steel frame that I was racing cross on, and that's the best feeling bike I've ridden. I did want to ask one last thing before we move to rapid fire. Knowing that Standert's in its now 11th year, I think, as a company, just wondering if you had any like plans for the immediate future or like a grand vision further down the line that you wanted to share with us.
More ambassadors.
At the risk of giving out more free stuff. Yeah, no, I guess at the risk of sounding a bit cheesy, we have internally in the company in the last half a year put a lot of work and thought into where are we actually going next, and what's the North Star or vision, if you want. What we came up with so far, this is now an unofficial introduction of of this, is that we feel we are here to redefine the standard of modern cycling. What that means for us is each one of us, also the three of us sitting here, ultimately our dream is to leave a mark, to have an impact on cycling. Maxa wants to build amazing bikes. I want to design beautiful bikes. Bena wants to tell
ambassadors what
engaging stories. Engaging stories. So that's kind of what we're here and what we set for us as a goal. Very specifically, what's next? That's a secret.
So, guys, there's one last segment that we like to do on our show with the people that we interview, and it's just a series of binary questions. So it's a one or the other, or it can be both, just to get a little quick insight into you guys as cyclists and as people. So the first question for you guys is coffee or tea?
Both. For me.
For me, it's coffee. A lot of coffee. Also filter coffee. I'm not like, we have both. Like we have a rocket machine here in the office and a filter machine, and I'm always opting for the filter.
Interesting.
I love coffee, but lately I'm getting back into tea in the morning and coffee second. Because from a performance benefit, it's actually better to wait for coffee a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
Beer or wine or liquor?
I'm married to an East European wife, so I'm all liquor.
I'm wine.
I'm beer.
All right.
Good spectrum.
White or black socks?
White.
White.
Good answer.
What about white or black shoes?
I don't understand the question. There's no black
Good
shoes.
answer.
Yeah.
Black shoes never won anything. There's only white shoes.
Yes, white.
Yeah, white. Yeah.
What's the best place you've ever ridden?
Ooh.
I guess that can only be answered as mountains.
Do you give us a country or just the mountains in general?
I think we've been the most to Mallorca, and just like naturally as our training camp has always been there. But for me, it's not that popular for cycling, I think, because there's like not like real mountains, but you have a lot of those 500 meter elevation hills, I would say. And that's in south of France, kind of close to Saint-Maxime, kind of at the Côte d'Azur. And there's like, you have the beach and then you go inwards and there's nobody. It's just small roads and like these hills where you, at a certain fitness level, I would say you can still take all those on the big ring. But it's still going up and down and it does twitchy roads, like no switchbacks, but like super twitchy. So that's super fun to like fast descending and all that. So that's and I also like, I'm a bit heavy for the real mountains. So that's good for me.
You guys got to watch out because we've made a prediction that the influencers are going to move over to Mallorca from Girona.
I mean,
they already do.
They already have. Girona's on its way out. Girona's a stock you sell, and you got to buy Mallorca.
That would be my place. I mean, Mallorca for me has always been my cycling happy place. So I try to spend as much time in the winter as possible there. It's, I mean, for me, best infrastructure. It's a no-brainer. You can ride flat, you can ride hilly, you can ride mountains. it's just made for cycling, and that is actually true.
All right, so my final question is, I have a Cannondale Cat X, and I'm sick of it. I don't like the press fit bottom bracket. I don't like the weird like offset rear wheel with a quick release. I don't really race cross, more for gravel, but I like the kind of ability, and I would be using the same components. I'd have to get new wheels because of this stupid quick release thing they've got. What standard frame model should I get?
He doesn't race cross. He says don't really. He does not. He doesn't
No,
race cross.
I just think about it every year and then don't do it.
So it's you want potentially at some point in your life attend a cross race, but you're mostly graveling.
Yeah.
He'll never do it. He wants gravel.
But potentially maybe one time.
Never. He won't ever do it. Gravel.
So then depends on how long you can run. You can take every bike.
No, but what frame should I choose to replace the Cat X?
In regards to what you said earlier about your style of riding, I would go with a flat fender.
Yes, I would go with a flat fender as well. It is more like the endurance bike we have, also off-road capability, and it has all the good stuff. It does not have press fit. It has T47, which we have adopted very early on and on all of our bikes. It has a good through axle. It will come in a new version pretty soon, which is gonna be pretty exciting.
That's the secret we were
That's the
talking
secret.
about.
Can I get one in green?
100%. You're good. You're good there with me.
Gotcha.
All right, that's what I love is green. Maybe you'll see me. I'll send you some pics once I replace the Cat X frame with a standard, and I'll throw it in Universal Alex's face. We want to thank you obviously for being on, but I think most importantly, we didn't talk about. We need to thank you, the company as a whole, and what you guys are doing is saving the world from drop seat stays. The worst thing that's happened to cycling in the last 10 years is drop seat stays. It's completely ruined the look of a bike, the double triangle, and you guys are building beautiful bikes with the seat stays in the correct position.
There is only one seat stay position. Yeah, no, thanks. We thank you for that. We appreciate the love for that. Maxi was saying yesterday, looking at the latest Ridley bike, that he thinks with the new wind tunnel development of actually having riders on the bike in the wind tunnel, maybe that'll lead to the seat stays going up again, because they realize that the aerodynamic is not actually that much better. So we'll see. We hope that they stay with the seat stays, so we have that as a USP. But
To Tony's point, thanks a lot for calling us out on what we're saying, because hot takes sometimes we're hot takes, not a facts podcast, as Tony likes to say. So we appreciate the comment. And then, of course, coming on the show, this has been really a revealing interview just to learn more about your brand, but just bike production in general. So yeah, it's been great having you on. So thanks a lot for coming on Cycling Fashion Week.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Hey, what are you doing? I don't know, I'm just fucking tossing bikes in the river, bro.
All right, now for our last segment of today, second segment, last segment, but there's two of us here, so 2 segments is plenty. It is our signature segment, Into the Canal. We have been asking for user submissions, and we have some, but we've gotten another voice note, which, to be honest, I think is my preferred format. 1, because we don't have to read anything out, and 2, the deliveries are kind of funny. So anyway, we'll play this one first, and this one comes to us from listener Courtney, who's in Baltimore, Ontario.
Okay, here's my hot take. I won a Canal Cycling Fashion Week because when I first started listing, it was pretty regular release, every week, every couple of weeks, and I felt well informed on my kit. And now, when I show up to my regular group rides, this long lull in between getting the most up-to-date information, I'm not even sure what to wear. And it's making me feel really uncomfortable. So, Universal Alex clearly is not as good as Italian Alex, because Italian Alex shows up. And maybe Tony should use some of his dad watts and start putting those into Showing Up and recording more episodes. And I'd like to give a chameleon to Warren because he's the only guy that's ever there. You guys got to get this straight.
Well, I mean, I obviously don't have much to add to that from Courtney. I agree.
I mean, I agree too. And I think but at the same time, like that was we switched out, we parted ways with the sponsor. We talk about this being a fun time, something very personal, a creative outlet. Mm-hmm. So it was great when we were really kind of consistent, but I think people should appreciate that we put in the effort. This is a free product. It's 100% free. It will always be free. So you might lose a couple, episodes here and there, but I mean, you're always getting quality every time it comes out.
I don't think we even have to justify it because we haven't really gotten any complaints about going sporadic. We just get occasionally questions of when's the next episode, but we also have some pretty exciting ones in the works as well. So without mentioning any names or brands, we have more in the works, and we're always working on it. It just, as Tony's point, takes some time. This is a passion project for us. We're always thinking of you.
I think the real thing is we appreciate that people want it more often. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That it's something people are looking for. So I can't disagree. I like to find a little more consistency. I think if we get rid of Skyler and Italian Alex, find two other people to be sort of bolster up the roster of co-hosts that we can rely on and we know won't bail for kind of, stupid reasons. So maybe that's the key.
Anyway, Tony, what do you got this week?
I think there's only two of us. I'm going to do a chameleon and a canal. Sure. So what do you want me to start with, the chameleon or the canal?
I'll start positive because I've got a double canal.
Okay. So the chameleon I'm giving to CAC, which is the Commercial Athletic Club out of Vancouver. I was actually supposed to be in Vancouver a little while ago. Things didn't work out again. Life is very busy. But they put on a weekly ride. I believe it's Tuesday nights, but don't quote me on that because I'm not from there. And I think it's probably one of the toughest group rides in all of Canada. The speed, the pace is incredible. Yeah, it's something I want to try and see how long I can last. I get dropped pretty early. It's always worth a fun try for those kind of notoriously hard rides. And I think the more important part of the chameleon is they have released two sort of club jerseys, which I have both of. This is one of the hardest things I think in all of cycling fashion, is to release a club jersey that looks cool, that doesn't it's like that people want to wear, that isn't just like you're not feeling like compelled to because it's your team or your club. Like I'm not even part of the CAC. I just know the people who run it, and shout out Sam. She just did such a good job with the jersey design. Each time he released one, it's just kind of DM. He'll kind of put it together, very unofficial. But the jerseys look great. I believe Warren got one of the newer ones. The quality is,
good for $70.
Yeah, it was very reasonably priced. But anyways, I think that's a really difficult thing to do. Anytime you're putting together something that's related and has a couple sponsors on it, it can look really bad and really cheesy. But Sam at CAC has done a great job. The jerseys look great. So anyways, that's my chameleon.
Tony, I quickly want to add, I did buy one of their jerseys for this year, which is a red and white jersey, but I also want to mention that I got a pair of white bibs to match, and they're from AliExpress, recommended by Sam, specifically the ones he uses. And I'm just putting a question to our listeners that they can DM us or email us, and do you want to see a picture of me in white bibs?
Certainly, as long as it's before you hit the rain or any dirt or something. But I want to see them in real life. Maybe this Fast Friday you'll wear them.
Oh, I'm planning on it. Yeah.
All right, amazing. All right, and then my canal is being almost there, almost fashionable. I was riding home from somewhere. I think I might actually just be commuting, but I was riding home somewhere. And I saw these two guys, and one guy had a Scapin, one guy had a BMC, and it was like they were so close, but they were just so far away. He had the white shoes with the black helmet. One guy had black helmet and black shoes, but then ankle socks. One guy had no computer, but a foam mat. Like there were like so many pieces that were so close. It was nice bikes. They had, 50, 60 mil rims. They had some good stuff. I think there was a sweep protection helmet. I can't remember every sort of element of it, but then there were just like pieces, ankle socks, and the helmet and the shoes not matching, and the quad lock phone mount. And so it was like, I was like almost more disappointed in them than someone who's just like wildly out there with like a, a sleeveless jersey and a bandana and a pair of mountain bike shoes, sockless. Like they're almost like, you're just like, okay, you're too far gone. But these two gentlemen were just like close, so close, like a couple tweaks and they would have looked great. Just so close. That's my Canal one. It's more disheartening to see someone so close than actually being really far away from it, I think.
I would agree, because it's clear they've put some thought into what they're wearing, but they're just missing like the final details, or they're just like happenstance into a really good look. But I don't know. I feel like they probably put some thought in it, but they're just, maybe they think ankle socks are okay, or like, maybe they're new cycling and they've got a better pair of socks in the mail. I don't know.
One guy had a BMC team machine and one guy had a Scapit. And like, a BMC can kind of be like, that's a very fast bike, but that's so big stuff. But if you have a Scapit, you'd think that like you're in the know of the kind of niche cycling. I was really surprised at that guy with the Scapit.
Mm-hmm.
That can kind of go back to my like Canal of like, he could have bought it at one of these shops that don't know how to like tell people, okay, you have to have these white socks about mid calf length and stuff. That's maybe a side hustle we could offer, is to like salespeople at shops, is to like come to us and we could do a course for about $1,000 a course. And they could come and we could teach them like what to tell people what they need, like, in very sort of specific, rigorous ways. So there's no ambiguity around, when they got the bike, they got the BMC. Now you say, they're looking at shoes and you say, okay, we don't want black Velcro mountain bike shoes. You just bought a BMC. We need you to get the look, blade pedals. We got to get the Sphere. Is this what we've learned also recently?
Well, so I was talking with a friend of ours who works in cycling media. For the longest time, I've thought that high end of Shimano accessories, like shoes especially, but I think also like sunglasses, always called it S-Fire.
Same.
But he was saying that he's pretty sure the intended pronunciation is Sphere. To which I said, why? Yeah, but why is there a hyphen there then?
Yeah, that throws it off.
I don't know. He was talking to somebody at Shimano, and apparently this is the case, but I don't know. I think it's still S-Fire. I mean, it's a ridiculous spelling anyway. Probably meant to compete with S-Works from Specialized, but
it's not Sworks.
Maybe it is.
S-Works. Is it Sworks?
No, it's not.
All right, someone at Specialized DM us and let us know if it's Sphere or S-Fire, because if you have the hyphen there, you're throwing everyone off. What do you got for us?
So I said I have a double Canal, but I've already forgotten what my second one was. The first one is a big one. Tony probably knows what it's going to be. You may have heard in the interview with Standert, I mentioned how I had a carbon bike that broke. So I actually told the longer story while talking to them, but I cut it out for time. I am throwing carbon bikes into the Canal because I think as we've made mention at some point in the podcast, last fall, I bought my first ever carbon frame, and I bought it specifically for racing cyclocross, doing some gravel racing, and then just general like gravel racing. I can only have one off-road bike. I can't afford to have like multiple bikes. Anyway, I bought the bike, not really because it was carbon, mainly because it had the geometry I was looking for more than anything. I also was like, well, people say carbon's great for racing. It's light, blah, blah, blah. And it had some snappy acceleration. It was definitely noticeably lighter than my steel Richie Swiss Cross that I was racing beforehand. But a few weeks ago, I was cleaning the frame and one of the seat staves was cracked. And at first I was hoping it was just chipped paint or something like that. It's gravel. I would have been okay with that. Took it to my mechanic. Nope, cracked frame. The frame's done. I will say at least this brand does have a 7-year frame warranty. I don't really want to name the brand. I don't know if that's really fair. So I'm in the process of getting that warranted. If it doesn't get warranted, that's a whole other thing. That brand will fully be named and shamed. I've had this bike for 8-9 months.
And part of that was the winter where you weren't riding it.
Yeah, I'd ridden less than 600K on this frame. And I don't even know how it happened, but this whole experience reinforces our stated belief that carbon sucks. It's why we talked about it with Standert, that we really prefer metal bikes. And I definitely do now. Like if I get that warranted frame, I'm already thinking about selling it and replacing it with either
a Standert
steel. Yeah, maybe a Standert. I looked at the cross bike again though. It's the geometry. They were kidding. Like it's race based. Like it looks like the cross bike looks like it's designed for like grass crits. I haven't decided yet what I'll do. There's a part of me that wants to give carbon a second chance. Put me off pretty bad. Like the fact that I don't even know how it happened makes me wonder, like, how can I even trust a carbon frame? again.
I mean, it could be a manufacturer's defect, but even then, like, I don't know, carbon's just so negative for me because of that, and I know someone who got their first carbon bike a while ago and like a weekend crash. It was like a bit of a hectic crash, but it still broke the frame, and because of the way it crashed, it wasn't warranty. They had to get it repaired. And then I've told this story probably ad nauseum about the Marinoni getting dented.
Mm-hmm.
And like it got dented, it pissed me off because I'm meticulous. I want things to look right, but I could have never fixed that, right? I could have ridden it the whole time. I sent in photos and everything to the frame builder, and there's no structural integrity. I wanted it fixed because I just want my bike to look perfect. That's the kind of thing. So even if you crash, I mean, a friend of ours has been riding a bike with like bent seat stays for like 3 years. There's no structural problem. So like, I think, carbon, unless you're really in that like elite race category where you just need that little bit of extra savings, I just don't see it. And I mean, we've seen some of the fastest people we ride with are on some type of metal bike, and it's not slowing them down on fast group rides. It's not going to slow you down. You're going to enjoy it. And then, I mean, I guess I could have given this a chameleon, but I was out riding out of the city for the first time in a while recently. And I did some gravel on the road bike. Now, fairly luxury gravel, it wasn't hectic or whatever, but it was still very comfortable on the steel bike. Like, I think that's another thing. You get a lot of comfort and compliance out of the steel. Aluminum can be a bit different, but anyways, I'm with you. I don't think I never look at a carbon bike and think I want that. I think it's worth the money. I think it's worth the time. I love the idea that the steel can be bashed around and kind of last, or it can be repaired a lot easier. Because that's another thing. You can repair the carbon, but usually it doesn't ever look exactly the same because they have to kind of like relayer on top. So it has like a little bit of a raisiness to it. It's not as sort of smooth. And people, we're bike snobs in how we want our bikes to look. So even just like a little change in the diameter of the tubing just throws the whole thing off. There's probably some people really good at it and can make it really close.
Yeah, not worth it. As we were talking, I remembered what my second Canal was. Because this happened to the carbon frame, I had a big gravel race coming up 2 weeks after I found the crack, called the Reggie Ramble in Ontario. Luckily, my cousin who was also doing the event, was able to lend me a bike, and we're about the same size. Actually, the bike fit me almost perfectly. It was a titanium frame and fit really well. Titanium was great. It, did the 200K on it. Very comfortable. What I am going to Canal is SRAM, which, side note, I was also corrected on the pronunciation of SRAM recently because I used the H in pronouncing it. SRAM. Apparently it's SRAM. Anyway, whatever. I don't know.
SRAM. I don't know.
Shit.
I'll say it how I want to say it. You make a product that crappy, we're going to say it how we want to say it.
Yeah, we're using the H because it's shit. Anyway, that I'm throwing SRAM in the Canal because the bike had a 1x-SRAM setup. So first of all, I had to get used to the different shifting, which honestly wasn't, I was kind of worried, like in the heat of the moment, I would like mess it up. That part wasn't that bad. I do personally find the Shimano shifting just more intuitive. The double tap, I don't understand why that's supposed to be better. Maybe somebody can drop us a DM and try to explain it, but you're wrong. What I will Canal SRAM for is my chain dropped 3 times on a 1x. There wasn't a chain keeper on it, so that can be why. But like 2 of the 3 times it dropped, I was on a flat gravel road that wasn't even bumpy. It just dropped. Maybe I wasn't used to the shifting and that's how it happened or something. The third time was when I had a bit of a crash, so that's fair enough. But the other 2 times I was literally riding flat. I had checked the chain after crashing and it seemed fine. The shifting was fine. And then it just randomly dropped twice off the front ring. Maybe it wasn't tuned up properly, something. I don't know. My cousin spent the day getting the bike ready for me, and I think he's pretty handy. So I don't know. I don't
know if you could. I mean, it's nice you're trying to like find caveats and like give excuses to SRAM. It just seems like to happen too much to people. Now we know there's some like defenders out there, but like a good friend of the podcast, Marco from Cadra, he did the Unbound. I think he had to abandon it because of whatever happened. I think there was a lot of the mud issue too. But he posted a video essentially of 5-6 people on the side of the trail and Unbound all having issues with their rear derailleur and stuff, and it was just all SRAM. So like at some point, these machines shouldn't have to be, they're not F1 cars. They shouldn't have to be tuned perfectly every time you get on the bike. Like there should be some leeway. I mean, that's why Shimano, I think, still is probably the leader, because you don't hear these issues with Shimano. Every chain's going to drop every once in a while. There's some issues, but like SRAM is constant. It's constant. Every time you hear that. I don't know. They got to like figure it out. I don't know how. They've seemed to have pushed strong on like the OEM spec. So like there seems to be more SRAM than there was before. But I don't know why anyone, like if you're choosing a build and you get to choose your group set, I don't know why anyone would choose them.
I will say, whenever I've read any kind of praise for SRAM online, it's usually their electronic group set. So maybe something about that where the chain doesn't drop. I don't know. It's just kind of funny that it was my first experience doing more than like a test ride on a bike with SRAM. And in one ride, granted, it was a long one, but like 3 chain drops and 2 non-rough patches. Like, I don't know. It can't be a coincidence that somebody who already thinks SRAM is bad, it happens to it. Like, I don't know. That's not a coincidence. That's real. That's it for this episode of Cycling Fashion Week. Thank you very much to Maxa, and Bene from Standert Bicycles for joining us, and also for calling us out, because it led to an interview. Or hot takes. Sometimes people don't always agree with them, and it can lead to an interview. So that's good. You can check them out online at standert.de. Very German of them. Check out their very nice looking bikes. And of course, you can follow them on Instagram at Standert Bicycles. Let's be honest, most of you probably do already. That is it for this week. Like we said, we have some pretty exciting guests in the works. So we'll try to get back to you with a new episode in a few weeks. Thanks for listening. Take care.